Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic, where I watch it so you don't have to. Today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of Mare of Easttown, entitled Enter Number 2. So, I'm off to a bad start on this video. I try to look into the titles of the episodes, kind of see what they mean, why they were chosen. And I do that every now and then. Sometimes I actually think about it and forget to talk about it on these videos, but last week was called Fathers. I thought that was a pretty obvious one, so I didn't talk about it too much. But this one, Enter Number 2, was interesting to me. I had to reflect on it a little bit after I watched the episode. I'm like, what was the name of this episode again? And I go back and I look, and I'm like, I don't really know about this one. I can't say definitively this is what it was, but there's a lot of potential entering of number twos. The one that first came into my mind was the fact that I think Deacon Mark is now the second main suspect behind Frank in the last episode. Because I don't really consider Dylan to have ever been a suspect. But I think with the whole reveal at the end of the second episode that Frank might be the father of Dylan and Aaron's kid, that Frank instantly became a suspect in our eyes, and also probably in Mare's eyes. And I want to talk about that. I want to spend some time on that in a moment. But I think Frank entered into Mare's consciousness as a suspect at that point, just out of curiosity. And whether or not that's valid is a discussion I think that's worth having. That could have been something that she clearly has a tortured past with him. That could be something that she was more inclined to believe and to make him a suspect than she probably would have been otherwise had it been someone else. But I think Frank kind of like became the first suspect at the end of the second episode, and I think at the end of this one now, Deacon Mark is now the second suspect. But there's some other number twos as well, like scene with Colin and Mare in the bar where Colin was kind of like getting kind of flirty with her, like, oh, I think I want to stay over here with you. Like, I'm like, is this now a number two potential love interest for Mare? I find the love interest angle to be entirely uninteresting, but it's still something. It's a further complication in the already complicated life of Mare. So yeah, potential second love interest there. Also potential second love interest for her daughter. Siobhan is part of this band. The chick that she had been dating was puking up her edibles on the couch. Like, kind of weak stomach you got, lady. But she's puking up her edibles on the couch, and then she comes back later. Siobhan does, and takes this DJ up. I'm sorry, I don't recall hearing the DJ's name, but takes this DJ up on this date offer to go to this concert. So a second potential love interest for Mare's daughter as well. And then we also have a second potential mother. Enter number two, a second mother for Drew. His whole life, essentially, Mare's been his mother. And I think they said he's 4, so I mean, he's probably not going to have any memory of this time anyway. But for his whole life, Mare's been his mother, and now here's his biological mother. I think her name is Carrie. Popping up into the picture and really making a push to get custody. And then another number two that I thought of as well was she dropped them 2 heroin bags in there. So enter number 1 and number 2. Enter them into her purse probably. I'm curious if I go back, and I'm probably not going to go back and watch the episode, but if any of you caught this, like, did you guys see her possibly put the heroin anywhere on Carrie during their conversation? Because that was the thing where it's like, on the surface, when that moment comes, you think, oh, she must have just taken Richard on his advice to actually have a talk with the mother. Like, how mature of her. And then you find out after the fact that this was all a setup for her to do the heroin shit in the first place. So it was like, she kind of like took his idea of like, hey, you should meet with her and talk to her. I was like, that'd be a good time for me to set this motherfucker up. like that's crazy. But yeah, lots of potential number twos here that I found to be pretty compelling and interesting, aside from the love angles, the love interest angles. That's not interesting to me. But I did talk about Frank as a suspect, and I want to talk about what I saw in this episode that I found to be a little strange. And it's not a knock against the episode at all. It's just something about human nature that I find to be interesting. And I'm curious because I feel like it would have played out this same way in real life. So it's not something that I feel like the show did wrong. I feel like the show did it right. But it's an interesting set of circumstances to me. When Mare presents Frank with this evidence, not evidence, but with this rumor that he might be the father of Aaron's kid, And we already know as the viewers that he lied about the relationship that they had. He made it sound he barely knew her. And then before Mare goes over there to confront him, Lori's like, yeah, she was seen getting out of his car. He's dropping her off at the crib. He's got like diapers and stuff. That's way more of a relationship than Frank let on. So we know that Frank lied. So it's like, okay, why did Frank lie? That's never going to reflect well on you in a murder investigation, lying about your how close you were with the victim. But there was only really two angles that was going to go. It was either he was actually doing wrong and he's lying about it, or he was just a really concerned teacher, because he said, I feel like she had problems at home, and he's kind of like, well, I don't really know, it's just a gut feeling. And there's the lie. He knew from talking to her probably that there were problems at home, and he felt bad for it. And I totally buy it. I believe him. Like, I feel like that's probably what happened. But Mare says, hey, are you willing to submit to a DNA test? And later in the episode, at this fair or wherever they were, one of his friends is like, yo, do you really think, I heard you you want Frank to do a DNA test. Like, do you really feel like he's involved in this? Like she's wrong for this, right? And then the same thing happened with Dylan. Dylan's parents come and say, hey, this cop heard that this might not be your kid. Like, they want you to do a DNA. And he immediately gets defensive and angry. And I get that. I understand that reaction from both of them. But at the same time, like, this isn't something that anyone should be taking lightly. Like, I would turn the show off if Mare, as a cop, hears someone say, hey, I suspect that Frank might actually be the father of this kid. And Mare goes, I don't believe that, and just doesn't do a DNA test just because of the relationship that she might have with Frank, or because she finds that to be implausible. Like, you don't just walk away from that. Like, that's case-changing evidence there, potentially. Like, that could give you motive. That could give you they don't even have a suspect right now. Like, that could give you a suspect, and she's supposed to just pretend like it's not like she's not supposed to do that. Like, of course she's gonna ask for DNA. Like, of course she's got to look into this and verify this. Like, you can't just let this go because you know him. Like, that would be such implausible police work that I'd be out on the show at that point. Like, don't be this smart of a show and then have a character be that stupid in that moment. But these people are reacting like that's what she should have done. Like, it's offensive to them that she wants them to submit DNA. And it's like, I understand that. And that's why this isn't a knock against the show. It's just an observation that I made that I found interesting. But the idea of getting pissed off, like asking for DNA, is somehow like that means I think you did it. Now you have to prove that you don't. Like, it's one of those things where it's not that. It's just like, you have to look into something like that. That's a game changer. Like, you have to. So, I don't know. I found that weird that everybody took offense to that was like a crazy thing for Mare to do. But a couple other things I want to talk about in this episode. Well, for starters, I thought this was a really good episode. Lots of good, lots of information divulged. We got some history as well. I thought it was interesting that we found out that Siobhan is doing a documentary, it seems, about her brother. I think that's going to probably reveal... I think that's probably going to reveal some stuff that we are not expecting. Like, I think right now they're playing it as like kind of like a means of displaying her pain or releasing it. Like, instead of just sitting here and sulking, I'm going to make this movie about my brother to memorialize him. And I think that's how it's being played now. But I think that down the road, something's going to be revealed with this documentary that's going to be very important. Something else, and I'm going to pose this question to the listeners as well. Something else that I think has to come back around at this point, because now it seems like two insignificant things, but that's not how television works. We have the old lady, I can't recall her name, but the one who in the first episode had the peeping Tom issue. And, the husband's supposed to set up the security camera. He hadn't done it. So we got nothing on the peeping Tom. We never hear anything about that again, or from that character again, until that character returns in this episode saying that she thinks that this particular kid should be looked into. And then later there's like a graphic in nature graffiti on her shed or something like that. And she thinks it's that kid. And he's like sitting in the backyard chilling like, yeah. And he had been mean mugging her throughout this fair, all this kind of stuff, right? So then Mare's like, did you get that security camera set up? Dude's like, yeah, it's all good. Let's check. And she looks at it, sees the video of him doing it, flipping off the camera, and then deletes it. like I don't understand why she deleted it and said that like, oh, it must not be safe. Like it's no, it's not. It must not be set up. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said safe. It must not be set up. Sorry. Like, why was she covering for that kid? Like, I don't know. Is that kid somebody important to her, and I missed it at some point? Like, I don't understand why she would do that. Like, delete that footage and pretend like it wasn't there. Like, why is she protecting this kid? I don't know. But that was an interesting thing that I came across. But again, good episode. Lots of great information put out there. Lots of good past information that we found out about. Like I mentioned with the documentary, something that's gonna bring the past to light, I'm sure. The only issue, and I don't even particularly want to call it an issue, but this show is so lockstep in formula with The Undoing that it is starting to become a little distracting. The Undoing did the same thing. Like it had a central murder mystery. It had a suspect at the center of it at the beginning. And then it seemed like at the end of every episode, the show presented a new potential suspect with very strong evidence to where you come out of that episode like, this motherfucker probably did it. Like, so that's how tightly this show seems to be following in the Undoing's footsteps. And there's several other shows, and I talked about this in the first episode, several other shows on HBO that have done this same kind of formula. And this show is doing it really well, and there's no knock against the quality of programming that this show is putting out there. But if nothing else, it is not original. This is a very well treaded formula that this show is walking down right now, and I do find that to be a little disappointing at times. But at the end of the day, I do think that by and large, it's doing all of these formulaic aspects of these shows that have been on HBO in the past. It's doing them a lot better than its predecessors. So it's really hard for me to really frame that as a criticism. It's just difficult for me to stay immersed in the show when things start happening that make me go, oh, this is just like so and so. Like that really takes me out of it when you're really following in the footsteps of a show that's a recent show. It's not like it's like a 1990s show or something like that. Like The Undoing was last year. So I don't know, that threw me off. But that's my only real criticism here. I think that they're doing a lot of great stuff with slowly building out Mare's character and whatever has happened to her in her past. Because every episode I'm like, Mare's such an asshole. Like she treats people like shit. But I mean, and then you look at it, it's like, well, she does have a dead kid, like who killed himself. Like that's not, people don't just wipe themselves off and now they're all better again. Like that's something you have to deal with. And we know that this happened fairly recently. But as the show progresses, I tend to think that more and more of Mare's assholishness revolves around some ways that she wronged people in her past. Like this isn't her treating people badly and then people responding to that in a negative fashion. I think it's people responding in a negative fashion to something that Mare did or has done that we as the viewer don't even know about yet. And that is now prompting her assholish behavior. I think what really triggered that for me was a conversation with Drew's mother. And she says something like, Kevin hated you and never would have wanted you to, he'd be upset if he found out that you were raising our kid. And I don't know. There's so much that tells me that there was hatred for her prior to Kevin dying because he had it himself. So what did he hate about her so much? What did she do that made him hate her? Seems like everybody in the town has a problem with her. So I'm really interested in seeing more about her past and more about how that's going to impact these cases. Speaking of impacting these cases, I really also need to know how the old lady with the graffiti and the security camera, how that's going to tie into the main story as well. Like that's now 2 times we've seen her in 2 situations that seem completely separate from the main plot. And from my experience in watching and assessing and analyzing television and film, not only do I believe that that's this woman in this situation is going to come back around and be important at some point, but I also feel like it will be central. Like, I don't necessarily think this kid might be involved in it, but I feel like the whole thing of setting up the camera, okay, we have the first situation in episode 1 prompts the setting up of the security camera. This situation in episode 3 shows us that the security camera functions. It captured this boy doing this graffiti, and Mare is aware that it works, even though she told them that it doesn't. So what that leads me to believe is at some point, this case is going to be cracked probably by something that shows up on their footage. That's where I'm going to go with my prediction. I don't know if that's. I'm not prepared to go into any more detail than that, but that's what I feel like. I feel like step 3 or step 4 is going to be. You said our security things don't even work. And she's like, and we know, and she knows that it actually did work, and she's going to pull it up, and she's going to see something on there that's going to crack the case. So that's what I think is going to happen. It's a 7-episode run. This was episode 3, so there's 4, 5, 6, and 7 left. That'd be a good time. That'd be a good time to pop that moment at the end of episode 6. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about here? I thought the argument with Mare and her mother at the beginning revolving the custody of Drew was an interesting argument, because the nature of it shows that they are so incredibly similar. And I think that's the point, is that we're supposed to take from is like, they're both really big assholes. And that's just, it's less about, and not less about, but I think Mare's current personality is a reflection of what she's experienced in her past and just what she got from her mother genetically. I think that's what we were supposed to take from that. So Aaron was missing a part of a finger that we found was shot off. And the finger was found 13 miles away from where her body was found. So we know that she was brought to where her body was found after she was killed. And long story short, they find the bullet. It's lodged into a tree. And they also, this also helps you discover that she probably didn't ride her bike back. And then we also know that her bike is still missing. And toward the end of the episode, we see that the priest threw the bike into the water. Now, of course, the priest has been looking suspicious from jump. I pointed that out. I'm like, he looked overly concerned. Now we know that the priest too has lied. Another number 2, a second suspect lying about the nature of their relationship with Aaron. But again, this could be, if it's anything like The Undoing, this could just be the terminology escapes me, but this could just be a trick, like a smoke screen, like, where it's like, oh, now we're looking like, oh, it must have been a deacon, but the deacon probably has the bike. He probably had it for a reason that he probably doesn't want to divulge to a cop, but he probably had it. He probably didn't do it, and he probably just was getting rid of the evidence, doing something wrong, but not the wrong thing of killing the girl. But then we also have the added thing of him having been transferred before. Has he been transferred for being inappropriate with children? That's what they do. So who knows? I guess we'll see. But I'm not buying the deacon as a suspect, just because as soon as if this is following in the footsteps of The Undoing, it's ultimately going to wrap around to being somebody who it looked like it was going to be the whole time, and all these little I can't remember the name of the word. There's a terminology for like these like fake outs where it's like, oh, you think it's this person? Oh, you think it's that person? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that it was the deacon at all. I think we'll have some interesting stuff with the deacon next week, and then we'll probably end up with a new suspect. That's the same thing The Undoing did. This seems to be doing the same thing. I'm not going to buy any suspects until I see something a little bit more concrete. All I'm seeing so far right now is proof that people are lying about the nature of their relationship with Aaron, but that doesn't necessarily make the nature of their relationship with Aaron inappropriate, and it certainly doesn't mean that they killed her. So I'm going to need to see a little bit more evidence of that, although tossing the bike over the water is pretty damn bad. What else did I have here? Let's see. Oh, the anonymous call that was given that was sent Colin's way about Deacon Mark's transfer, that had to have come from Mare's cousin, right? And if it did come from Mare's cousin, why did he feel the need to drop an anonymous call rather than just tell his cousin, like, hey, he was transferred, right? But I feel like the way those two interacted with each other in both times we saw them interact in private, in this episode and the previous one, I feel like both of those interactions were very suspicious to me. Speaking of suspicious, I was suspicious about the reaction of Faye, Frank's fiance, overhearing Mare kind of accuse Frank of not accuse Frank, but informing Frank that there was a rumor that this was his kid. Her look read to me more like a look of concern than a look of anger or disappointment. like she knows something is up and Mare is heading in the right direction, something like that. I don't know. I could be tripping, but it was a look of like I'm worried that something that I know about is going to come to light. Uh, could be wrong, but I don't know. So episode ends with the reveal that Mare dropped the heroin in the well, I don't know where she put it, but she planted the heroin on Drew's mother, set her up to get flicked for carrying heroin. And the chief put her on leave, took her badge, took her gun, and that's that. So, and told her, like, if you think about picking this case up on your own, don't do it. So it looks like Colin's on his own for right now. I mean, of course, I doubt it's going to stay that way. She's probably either going to do it on her own or find a way to get herself reinstated. I don't know, but right now, Colin's on his own. I watched the preview for next week. There's a scene of him talking to the deacon. So, we'll see. But it looks like there's a whole lot of crazy stuff happening in the next episode. So I'm real curious to see where this is going to go. But that's all I have right now. Again, I really enjoyed this episode. The only complaint that I have is that it's following so much in the formula of The Undoing and previous HBO dramas that it does take me out of it at times. Like I said, the reveal with the deacon at the end, it felt like, okay, now we're doing this like thing where we make it seem like a different character is a primary suspect at the end of every episode, and it just kind of took me out of it. That's not going to happen for you guys if you didn't watch The Undoing, but it did for me. But like I said, I think that this show is doing a lot of those things better than its predecessors. So I'm still enjoying the show quite a bit. I'm still very curious as to where it's going to go. I still need to know what is the point of Richard. I really don't know what his purpose is right now. If it's a pointless love interest and this has no bearing whatsoever than being a potential love interest, I don't see why you felt the need to shoehorn him in here. But Kate Winslet's performance is awesome. I'm loving it. I'm liking seeing Evan Peters in a more mature role. I feel like he's playing a weirdo in everything I see him in, so glad to see that. I really like how they're handling the dissemination of information. Like I like how we're still being made to work. Like they're giving us information, but they're giving it to us in a way where we still have to be paying close attention, able to analyze, able to understand what the show is trying to tell us sometimes without directly giving us information. So like they could have done, and maybe they did, because I can't say they could have done, maybe they did do it, but they could have been super obvious with the planning of the heroin. But I think from my perspective, like at least from how it was with me watching it, again, I could have missed something, but from my perspective, they played it as a straight conversation, and then we find out after the fact what it really was. And then we're meant to piece together, like, the fact that she ignores Richard's text, like how the conversation with what's her face go. Of course, you have to kind of ignore that text because you know that you just planted heroin on her. So you have to like, you can't just be like, yeah, we're fun. Her whole thing was this is a thing of people just lying about the nature of their relationships with people. When the chief comes up and he's like, hey, what were you doing last night? She lies, and everybody in this town is lying about things that, for everybody else, things that look bad but are inconsequential, whereas what Mare did is actually a huge fucking problem. But everybody in this town is lying. So it's still really compelling, still really interesting. And I guess I'll see you guys next week for episode 4. Drop in the comments. Let me know what you thought about this whole idea of people shitting on Mare for wanting this DNA test. Did I miss something with the heroin planting? Did they give me like a really overt shot that now that I know if I go back and watch it, I'll be like, oh, that's when she did it? Or is it subtle? Do they not show anything at all? Real curious about that. Yeah, so let me know what you think about any of the big talking points I had for this episode. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.